High Heel Gamer, and this is The Breakdown. What? Hey, everybody!
All right, here we are, folks. Everybody join around, gather around in a little circle. We're having a breakdown. We're having our little communal get-together here as everyone is hunkered down, huddled safely in place, watching the crap out of all kinds of Netflix and streaming and other kinds of things, including, I will say, a feature film that just came out that has a direct connection to our guest today. I'm super excited, even though we had the best intentions in the world, my next guest and I, of getting together back last summer at San Diego Comic-Con, but it was such a zoo that I did not get to hook up with him there, but I'm so glad to be hooking up with him right here, right now. The creator, one of the creators of the recently super successful Bloodshot movie, one of the creators of the comic book, Kevin Vanhook, joining me right here, right now on The Breakdown. And, of course, Kevin has done quite a bit more than just that over his long and illustrious career. Hey, Kevin, how's it going, man? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my God. Where do I start? This guy's done everything, or at least he's tried to do everything. I don't know if he succeeded, but he has tried. He has been an artist, a writer, a filmmaker, visual effects, you name it, he's done it all. Why am I telling you? I'll let him tell you. Kevin Vanhook is joining me on The Breakdown. What's up, Kevin?
Thank you. And just to clarify, I succeeded. Yes, I started off writing and drawing comics, and then worked on the other side of the desk as an editor and art director and production manager, and then ended up starting my own company and teaching myself how to make films and do visual effects. And then started making movies and working in the industry, doing all those kinds of things.
Very, very cool. You're very. It's very enviable to see that you've succeeded in all of those things. You really. Let's kind of go back to the start of it here. What was your first attempt here? Were you an artist primarily? Did you want to be a writer? What was your first avenue in?
In comics, I started off as an artist, and so I started working for Pacific Comics when I was 17. And and then so I've been at it a long time. But I started drawing comics. I was fortunate enough to meet a guy named Roger McKenzie. Roger was a writer on things like Ghost Rider and Captain America and Vampirilla and all kinds of stuff like that. And he was kind enough to end up being a mentor to me and not just, telling me to buzz off. And he was very helpful. He ended up showing my stuff to David Scroggie at Pacific Comics and got me work there. And a couple years later, I created a comic book series called Jack Frost, and he edited it. And we did a couple of issues there with Amazing. For the first 10 years, that's it right there.
Right there.
That's funny. Good timing. Not something I'm known for. Is timing. I have movies come out during the middle of the worldwide pandemics, and
that's a unique kind of timing all into itself.
Yes, it is. But yeah, no, it's and what I was getting ready to say actually was the first 10 years of my career was starting to work for companies that would then fold, and so it was a lot of that, and so it was a lot of working in and out of comics to being a graphic artist. I was also a computer hobbyist, so I was messing around with graphics on computers before there was really graphics on computers, and so where you had to literally do it by programming to turn on a pixel, which sounds so silly today, but I was fortunate enough to help start a company called Innovation in end of 88, and then be an early employee of Caliber Press in 1990. and then in '92 joined Valiant Comics, where I'm probably most known for successes there.
So you've had a long and somewhat illustrious career. I've prowled the internet, of course, and I've known you via social media for a little while now, and it's always fun to see things that you share and things that pop up, including some artwork from, I guess, back in the day. At some point, you did some Batman artwork that I've seen a page or two from.
It's a lot of those kind of things were samples for DC or Marvel along the way, or projects that were started and then killed. But I ended up writing Batman, doing Superman and Batman versus Vampires and Werewolves and Batman Confidential. But yeah, I had somewhere around a dozen years ago, I decided I wanted to get back into comics and just have my hand in it. It's a medium I've always enjoyed, and met Dan DiDio and through Jimmy Palmiotti. And Dan and I hit it off, and we started talking about projects we could do together. And I ended up writing maybe a dozen or two books for them. And issues of things all told. I did several miniseries, Red Tornado Family and Oracle the Cure, and Lobo, the Batman stuff.
So where did the idea for Bloodshot come from? Was it because around then was, of course, the Gulf War and lots of kind of things going on in the world. It was kind of a rocky time, as I remember, for a lot of people. What was the impetus to create that character?
Well, Bob Layton had his input with the idea of using something with nanotechnology. And so that was something he was interested in, the idea of nanites. And I was kind of the science guy. I was really, of the writers, I was somebody who was more into hard science fiction and real science. So I was into things like VR in 1992, 1993, the first time around, and that sort of thing. But I worked with Bob, and then to kind of get that concept of using a character that did that. And initially he was kicking around the idea of creating an android character, and we started talking about, well, what about an enhanced human? And then that's kind of what I ran with. And initially the idea was it was going to be terrorists was going to be what he went after, and something that we were starting to see a little bit of at that time. I mean, we'd always, for the prior 15 or 20 years, we had seen things like, the idea of airplanes getting hijacked and taken to Cuba and those kind of things.
Right.
Or terrorist bombers and living in New York. Let me get my timing straight. Right after Bloodshot 1 came out, so when the World Trade Center was bombed the first time.
In early 93, yes.
Yeah, February 93, I believe. And so we came out, Bloodshot 1 hit the stands November 17th of 92, in some places, November 18th in others. And which was the same day Superman died. So it was a very big day in comics.
Right, yes. One guy is dead. Here's a new guy.
And for me, it's one of those things where it's like, I finally sell almost 1 million copies of something, and I'm still number 2 because of the death of Superman. But yeah, it was, I was interested in those kind of stories. Mike Grell, who created John Sable, was a big hero of mine. And,
yep, good. Friend of mine now, yes.
I know. And Mike had actually gone to bat for me with First Comics back in the mid 80s, and told them that he wanted me to take over the book as an artist. I don't think Mike really knew my writing at that time, but I could be wrong. And but First was kind of taking the attitude that they were on the outs at that time, and they didn't want to do anything Mike wanted, and so I kind of got lost in the shuffle. But then, and unfortunately, that's how that played out. But on the bright side, I had Mobius and Howard Chaykin tell them that I should be the one drawing that book. And it's like, I can die peacefully with those endorsements. But Mike his kinds of stories had been a big influence on me. And so I wanted to explore paramilitary action adventure kind of political intrigue things. And so that was something I was interested in. And I had already started to push Frost into a bigger guns, bigger action thing in a little mini series I did called Frost the Dying Breed for Caliber. And so it was kind of a natural evolution of that. And working with Don Perlin, who drew Bloodshot, my other co-creator, Don kind of wanted to cut loose and do something that was very violent and very heavy on the action and stuff. You got to realize this was a guy who was 62 when we started, 63 when the book came out.
Okay.
And had a wonderful career, but no breakaway, runaway success like this. And then here we had a book that did so well, and it was very cool for me. I was 26, so I would tease him that our ages were palindromes when we started.
Yeah, there you go.
But it was just as cool for me to see him have that success as it was for me to have it for myself.
Yeah.
And had a lot of great interest. Even Rob Liefeld reached out and faxed me, hey, Kevin, Bloodshot Youngblood, this blood's for you. What do you think? And that's what led to Deathmate, which was a crossover between Image and Valiant.
Yeah. Well, and it's, definitely Bloodshot was taking the Valiant line in a direction that Image was paving the path right in front of you guys.
I think so. I think that was kind of our answer, even though, again, our artist was, a very solid, traditional, older school guy, started drawing.
But he was embracing the new era.
He was, and I think the fans saw that. And the other thing, I know I'm making a big deal about the age, but I want to point out also, we would go to signings, and this was an era where we're paid to go to do a comic book store signing, right. And the kids getting his autograph didn't care one way or the other if he was in his 60s or his 20s. They just thought the book was cool. Yeah. And I thought that was just a wonderful thing too, to see that didn't matter. It was wonderful to not see that kind of ageism, because already at that point, Valiant was using a lot of older artists, Stan Drake, who is a brilliant comic strip artist, and Steve Ditko doing breakdowns for us and layouts for us. So and they couldn't get work in a lot of places. Yeah, it was just so I thought that was really cool. So
yeah, good stuff. And you guys did that book for almost 4 years. Is that right?
Sounds about right. I know I wrote about 40 issues. I think Don stayed on it for a couple of years. When Acclaim bought us in June of '94, and we did a new marketing campaign called Birthquake, and where we changed things up, we started publishing a lot of the bigger books twice a month. Good or bad, that the idea at the time was part of the reason things don't sell is if something sells out and a fan comes in, somebody else comes in and wants to buy Bloodshot that's not on the stands, he'll end up buying this other book, and now his loyalties are switched, and he won't come back when Bloodshot's out next month. Mm-hmm. And I think we heard it more. I think we inundated the market too much, but that was the philosophy. That was the intention. Sure. And ended up teaming up with Sean Chen and Norm Brayfogle. So I still was writing every issue, but I would write alternate issues with these two guys, and or alternate storylines. And it was a great time. I mean, both of them were doing some of the best work of their career. I had just done a 2-issue miniseries with Brian Hitch called Visitor versus the Valiant Universe. And Brian had some kind of reason why he couldn't finish the last 4 or 5 pages of the second issue, and brought in Sean Chen to finish his layouts. And Sean was a brilliant artist in his own right, but working over somebody that was that dynamic and that different from his own style, Sean made a huge jump in his own work coming out of that, and that all showed in that Bloodshot run.
Yeah.
And that's when we created Rampage, and which is a character that even the newer Valiant has echoed and tried to replicate.
And so when the new Valiant started up several years ago, was Bloodshot something they instantly wanted to bring back? And how much conversation did they have with you about, hey, this is a book we want to bring back. This is something we want to really put our weight behind, because it's now the first in what they hope to be a universe of films.
The reality is that, yes, they wanted to bring it back immediately. They were also very, very concerned about being labeled as people who were just rehashing the old stuff.
Sure.
So none of us original creators were involved in anything.
Right. But did they have to? I mean, they had to talk with you, right? Even though they didn't invite you back to the table? Was it?
Didn't have to. No, because I was work for hire. I have I have financial participation in what happens with it, but not the extent of it was really minimal.
Sure.
Best way to put it.
Yeah. But and now, did you read it? What did you think of the new take on it when it came out?
No,
you didn't read it. Probably for the best. So how much of a shock was it for you when the whole movie thing came along?
Well, look, to be fair, I had read a little bit of what Dwayne Swazinski did, and I think he's a very talented guy. And you have to realize that there had been a previous reboot of my book before. So back when Acclaim bought us, after I stopped working for them, they did another reboot movement where they decided that just took the character and completely revamped it. New name, new character, new backstory, just really using Bloodshot as the name more than anything else.
Right.
And again, and it was well done. It just, it's, I would be lying if I didn't say it's like, why don't you just stick to the core idea of what we did? I would feel better if you just, didn't just discard the one that sold 1 million copies.
Right. All of that success, right?
But the Dinesh Shamdasani, who's was the publisher of the new Valiant that started in 2012, had been a fan of our books, had been somebody I had interacted with a little bit on fan boards over the years, and he really genuinely loved the stuff, and he did want to keep me involved, and he was kind enough to get my feedback on things as the film started progressing. And you got to realize that there were years of development of, it's really going to happen, and then don't hear anything for a year or two. And the guy that directed Kick-Ass is going to do it. It's like, oh, awesome. And then, he's been told he has to do the X-Men First Class, and he can't do this. So, but he's still attached to the producer. And so those kind of things where it would evolve. And then Jared Leto was going to be attached and then wasn't. And then just this constant evolution. But I was, once it was rolling, I was invited to and flown to South Africa to be on set with Bob Layton, and he and I got to be there for a week and interact with the cast and hang out with Ven and all these people and Sam and Asa and all the we missed Guy Pearce by a day, but pretty much saw everybody else and all the major players, and saw a lot of big action stuff being shot, and we're treated wonderfully, and so that was a great thing. And then because of my relationship with Dinesh, when things like the trailer started being worked on, he let me have a sneak peek and ask my thoughts on that, and then also an early cut of the film. Wanted to know what I had to say, and I think was genuinely respecting the fact that I think over time he realized I was an actual filmmaker, and
that had to help, right?
He started to kind of put a little more weight into what I had to say about storytelling, visual storytelling.
All right, so give us the breakdown here. First of all, congrats. I hope you were happy with the movie. There are a great many people who can probably say it was the last movie they saw in theaters for God knows how long, but it's also coming out early for home viewing, which I think is a brilliant idea. You see a lot of companies starting to do this now. You were at the big premiere. You were there with Vin Diesel. You were there with everybody that was at the premiere. It looked like a ton of fun.
It was.
How different is the movie for those who are fans who have seen the movie and go, oh my God, this is so fantastic, this is so great, other than the character's name and some of the situations? How big of a departure is it? What is the movie based on your original take?
The film is closer to the 2012 Bloodshot. It's part of that goes with the fact that somewhere along the way, some of the folks got the idea that they felt the mob was a 90s dated or organized crime was a 90s dated idea. They, in fact, I had a conversation when they were trying to be nicely explain to me why they didn't go my direction, but made him a soldier and this different things. They said, when's the last time you saw organized crime as the primary villains? And I said, other than say John Wick or Daredevil, I can't really think of it. And you could see there was kind of like, oh well, yeah, I guess so. But it was a conscious choice to go towards more of a military thing, which was an aspect of what I did all along. My character was a character who had been a bad guy, had been a mob enforcer, whose memories were wiped, his blood replaced with nanites, and now he becomes a superhuman character who is at its heart a good person who had been a very, very bad person. So it was a story about nurture versus nature. It was a story about atonement, loyalty, and a lot of those themes still run through this Bloodshot. Yeah. And that was one of the conversations I had with Vin specifically, because he was asking me, what's it about? And I said, well, for me, that's what it's about. The nanites and stuff is the hook, it's the gimmick, but what the character is about is showing that somebody can actually rise above circumstance and be truly a good human being.
Now, the home video, or I say home video. See, we're both of that generation now. Home video. The home viewing version of it is out. It's already out now,
and that's VOD for purchase.
For purchase. Not just rentals. You can go ahead and own this in your collection
as a digital file, and then following this, and then rentals, you'll be able to have hard media. There will be a Blu-ray. There will be DVD.
Sure, absolutely. Now, at last count, how was the box office? Because it was number one the week it came out. Did better, I think, than some of the early prognosticators were saying, because, of course, the panic was setting in with the pandemic, and people were starting to withdraw from society.
It was the weekend of really the official kickoff of the pandemic. So.
Big weekend.
We did, and yet Sony had projected 10 million in sales under a normal market.
Sure.
And we did 13 point something is the final number I saw. So even in a market where people were afraid to go out, and understandably so, even in a market where I went to, and you may know this because we interact on Facebook, I went to Grauman's Chinese Theater with my family, and to see it in IMAX laser, one of the best theaters in the world, best auditoriums, wonderful sound, and was treated very nicely because the manager, Levi Tinker, was told that I was going to be there, and so he actually opened up the place to us and let us sit in the private manager's box and all that stuff. But we were there, 7 people in my party, 5 other people in the theater.
Really? That was
empty it was. And that said, that little audience, because I'm the only one there that had seen it already, applauded at the right places, laughed at the right places, and also it was just awesome. So.
Yeah. And that was your first experience seeing it on the big screen. You had seen it in editing bay or in smaller venue?
No, my first experience seeing I had seen it in a producer's private bay in the summer, but I saw the finished film at the premiere.
Wow.
And so, at the Regal in Westwood, which is where they premiered Batman and Independence Day and a lot of classic movies, Fast and the Furious.
How is it? I mean, just sort of describe for us the emotional quality of seeing your creation, even though it has changed obviously since your inception. How did that hit you?
Oh, it's very cool. It's there's no denying it. That it's a really cool feeling, and it's neat to see, and because on some level you can take pride in the fact that nobody would be here if it wasn't for something we thought about 28 years ago. and that starts with a conversation, an idea, and then it was so funny because some of the people interviewing me on the red carpet didn't know the history of it, and understandably, and they're coming from Variety or Hollywood Reporter or whatever. But one of them, who is probably almost everybody that interviewed me, was probably younger than the comic book.
Right.
So but one of them said, "So when you created this comic book, did you ever imagine that Vin Diesel would be playing the part?" It's like, when I created this comic book, Vin Diesel was just starting to think about acting.
That's right. Yeah.
This is long before Riddick or Saving Private Ryan or Iron Giant or anything, years before these things. And I think I looked it up the other day. I think he had done a short film.
Right. So. Right. Yeah, boy, time marches on. There's no kidding. When you were watching it, what do you think Don, the original artist, would have? What was your feelings thinking about what you guys did back in the 90s as you were watching this movie?
I think he would like it. I think that he'd like the action. I can't help but knowing Don's Brooklyn raised and kind of this, comes across like this old tough guy with a teddy bear heart. But Don, would probably like to see it, as I would, closer to what we conceived of, because, inevitably we're going to think that what we did struck a chord with people in print and would do the same thing in film. Some of the notes I had from the first cut of the film were about the fact that I know where you're going with all this stuff, but they were definitely pulling back away a little bit from the comic book stuff, and not just my comic book, but comic booky stuff. And I said, I think that if you do that, you're at the risk of just creating a generic action film.
Right.
And to take my feelings out of the loop, it take my ego out of the loop. That's the concern. And I wasn't the only one saying it. And so a lot of the things that I wanted them to do, they ended up doing. So they ended up in post. They had such a great reaction to the film that they got another several $1 million to go and do reshoots. And so and so they punched up the ending, and they did more effects and did more of the things that pushed him closer to my Bloodshot with the pale skin and that sort of thing, which wasn't in the original plan.
Right.
So it was all good things, and I think that I think it got close enough to the core of what I created with the guys that it's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, and give us some insight, if you will, if you know, at this point. Obviously, the world is reacting to things day by day, minute by minute. Nobody expected the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expected a pandemic. Yet here we are. Bloodshot obviously opened strong. What's the feeling? Are you hearing anything from the folks at Valiant or Sony about their movie universe? Everything hinged on this thing being the launching point. Hopefully, they're not going to hold the pandemic against the movie.
So what I've been told, because we ended up doing around 25 million worldwide. So that 13 million change was just in the US. So that's really good for opening weekend, especially in light of this. And so I was told directly that Sony was very pleased and not at all disappointed. In fact, surprisingly pleased how well it performed. That was one of the reasons why they rushed to make the decision, let's go ahead and do the VOD. So there's a lot of people that want to see it. And it's complicated, and I'm not involved in this stuff, but just from what I understand, it's been complicated by the fact that Valiant has made a deal with Paramount for a lot of the other characters for the rest of the universe. Wow. And so it moving forward with a universe, it would have to probably be in conjunction with Sony or do some kind of a deal. Like, so you're kind of back to the Marvel thing with Sony.
Yeah.
And but I think that there's we had on almost 80. We were at 80%. I think with over time, it's maybe 78% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. That's really good.
Really good.
And so even though critics might hate it, but or not care or whatever, the audience rating is what people really look at, and that's been very high.
You had a fan base then. You've got a big fan base now. What's next for Kevin Vanhook?
I just finished about a month ago writing a pilot for a brand new TV series that I'm excited about called Savant, and it's a serial killer murder mystery with that deals with an artist who has photographic memory, can draw things he's only seen once, and then one day he's also drawing a series of horrible homicides that end up happening over the course of the next year. And so we explore that. So it's something I'm excited about. I'm very pleased with, and getting some interest from showrunners in the business. And so we'll see how that comes out.
Congrats, and
Thank
good
you.
luck with that. It sounds like a really cool concept.
Yeah.
Hopefully when the wheels start turning and production start happening again, you'll be at the top of the pile.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to have a conversation tomorrow, and then it's been pushed to Thursday. But these are people who are doing shows at Netflix now, and who've done some high profile stuff, and they're genuinely interested. So it feels good. You never know. I mean, it's an industry where just like with the Bloodshot movie, that I wasn't supposed to be home because I was going to be on this tour promoting. I was going to be at Emerald City Comic Con, and I was in Vegas, and I was going to be in Denver, and all these things. And just one by one, they're all getting canceled and pushed, and we don't know where it's going to go. I read today that Diamond is not accepting any new product. Diamond comic book distributors. So that's going to change things, and so the publishers are doing what they can to reach out to the retailers and make things returnable and try to take some of that pressure off, because they buy months in advance and their stores are closed.
Yeah. It's a scary time because nobody knows. Yeah, nobody knows what's going to happen next.
No, and it will take time, to calm down, and hopefully the worst case scenarios are far from being what will really happen, and we're all safe and healthy and can survive this thing.
And I really appreciate that a lot of musicians have now taken to live streaming, and artists, the creative people, they're the ones who respond the first and the best in the time of crisis, and they give us hope and they give us inspiration. And I really think that the comic book creators, the industry's been having its lackluster moments in recent years and or decades. I think they're going to come out of this stronger. I think they're going to come out of this smarter and better, and the true creative people are going to rise up and do some of their best work.
Well, I hope that's true. I think that I think the talent is there. I think that and I don't have a solution for this. And normally I don't mention a problem unless I have a suggestion for a solution. But the model of what we do in comics, it may not be broken, but it's not perfect, and it's possible that we create too much content for the market, that supply far exceeds demand. But that's a hard thing to combat. Comic book distributors years ago tried combating that by saying, well, if you don't sell at least X number of books, 500 books, whatever it was, we won't carry your title, we'll cancel. But it's a hard one, and it's hard to I've had my rants in the days when I was one of the publishers, when I was part of Valiant or Innovation or Caliber, where I would talk about distributors stepping up and doing more for retailers, helping, actually not just being handlers, but actually coming in and helping them rack and so forth. And to some extent they do that, but but the market's changed. It's changed dramatically, even in the last few years, and especially compared to when I was kind of at my heyday in comics in the mid 90s, where we were just seeing things like Magic the Gathering come in and as much non-comics merchandise take up floor space and shelf space in comic book stores. And that was a real evolution, because traditionally comics would have its little downturns, but we would come back. And in that era, there was a downturn. And when the downturn happened, other product started filling up those retailers' stores. And now there wasn't as much room or need, for comics, for just traditional comics. And so they scaled back in some cases. And we also simultaneously were dealing with the fact that where kids of my generation could only see, superheroes do their thing, or fantastic characters do their thing in comics, a little bit in movies, but not much. Yes, we could believe a man could fly with Superman, but there wasn't a whole lot of that was on that Star Wars Superman level.
Right.
But by the 90s, that was starting to become much more commonplace. We'd seen dinosaurs that were believable and all this stuff. And video games and home entertainment and other things were starting to compete for that time and that energy, and even things that I applaud, even things like the Harry Potter books. That suddenly a kid that might have decided to spend that money on a Spider-Man, decided he wanted that book, and that's a great thing. I want them to read, but at the same time, there was a decrease in fandom.
Yeah.
And the industry can't survive with mostly 45, 50-year-old readers.
No, too much of a good thing sometimes. But I think they'll reinvent out of necessity.
Yeah, I think there definitely will be some kind of a drastic revitalization in some area of it, just because it's just the nature of human beings that when these kind of things, we've not had anything quite like this, but when devastating things happen, somebody goes, oh, well, that's when they invented the telephone, or that's when they invented the whatever, and it becomes out of necessity.
Necessity, that's right. If folks want to check you out, where can they find you? Website? Any good information on where to follow you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it's I'm very easily found on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. It's always my name, so it's Kevin Vanhook, and I think Twitter might be Vanhook Kevin, but it's all basically the same thing. And I do have a website, which is kevinvanhook.com, but like a lot of people, I don't think I've updated it in like 8 months. So.
It happens, man. It happens. We all got a lot of extra time at home right now to get on those updates and work on projects. Or
right now, I'm trying to finish up visual effects on 2 different movies. But yeah, it's before people start deciding that they want to pare down and not have projects going on. So
yeah, exactly. Well, dude, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad that the movie is a success. You definitely have put in the miles and have earned all of the kudos that go along with it. And next time I'm at San Diego, I'm buying the first round.
Okay, well, I look forward to it.
We'll do it. Thank you so much, Kevin Vanhook, joining us today. Stay safe, stay healthy, buddy. And that was the breakdown.
All right, take care.
You too.